Welcome to A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, a podcast about geek culture by lawyers with your hosts, Ben Siders and Kirk Taman.
And welcome back to A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, the podcast that asks interesting questions that don't have any answers with your host, Ben Siders. That's me. And the other guy is Kirk Damon.
That's Kirk, as in the Captain of the Enterprise.
We are intellectual property lawyers and certified geeks practicing law in St. Louis, Missouri. You can find me, Ben, on Twitter, or should we call it X now? I refuse to say X. At Benjamin Siders. Kirk is at KirkDMN, and the podcast is at LGGPod. Today we are doing our Star Wars holiday special. The year after the holiday is over. Different holiday. We'll find a holiday in January.
It's a Valentine's Day special.
Valentine's Day special. So we're going to kind of do something different than what we used to do. We're going to give our thoughts on 4 Star Wars things that have happened.
And maybe a few others, at least, to talk about briefly.
Yeah, that we've both seen but haven't really done an episode on yet. And we just don't want to... If we do all these individually, all you'll ever get is Star Wars content. And although we like that, you may not. So we're going to cover Andor, Ahsoka, Acolyte, and The Mandalorian Season 3. And then just kind of go through quickly what is in development and what we think about it. Although we don't know much about any of this stuff, so that part might be rather short.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so let's go in alphabetical order. Acolyte is the most recent. Well, I guess I should say that Skeleton Crew is out, but we're not going to cover that today because I have not seen anything other than the first episode.
I've seen all 7. I'll just briefly say in conjunction I've been enjoying it. We can talk about sort of, what it is. I may end up mentioning something from it because I think it is relative to some of the other things that are out there. But yeah, I think it's, we'll talk about that later. And when it's also not done yet. We're recording this, so season 7's out. 8's coming here in a day or two. But yeah, that's sort of where we stand. So
we'll start with the Acolyte, which other than the Skeleton Crew is the most recent. The much panned, much hated, much maligned Acolyte. So I guess we should say if you haven't seen these things, we're going to be spoiling the heck out of it. So
particularly for Acolyte.
go see it. If you haven't seen it, Acolyte, plot summary briefly, we've got...
Is there a plot?
Well, okay, so it takes place 100 years before the original trilogy.
Yes, we're in sort of solidly Old Republic.
Yeah, time period that's not been explored very much yet. As it opens with a bang, we've got Carrie-Anne Moss plays a Jedi who's in some bar and gets confronted by who we assume is a former student, maybe, and she is quickly murdered. And this launches what looks like it's going to be an interesting, engaging murder investigation because the character who kills her, Osha, we find out has no recollection of doing it.
Yeah, and
it's a great start.
It's my real take in conjunction with Acolyte is that I have it. It starts with a bang. It's actually relatively well acted. In sort of these big.
Well,
things.
I love that she doesn't draw a lightsaber, right? She's sort of the old school Jedi.
She uses a blade, like an actual knife. I mean,
or trying to a pacifist monk type approach to things.
Yeah, and that's I think the real thing we have with Acolyte that we all commented on at the beginning is it was a really good sort of investigation about aspects of the Jedi that they hadn't really gone into, and it. To me, again, I think one of the things with it, and I've been rewatching Clone Wars again recently, is the martial aspect of the Jedi is something that I don't think they've gotten into as much as they probably should have. And
it's not very clear like what their role is.
Well, and I'm going to see it in Clone Wars with the concept of a Jedi being trained for combat. That part of having a lightsaber, part of what this is you're trained for hand-to-hand combat. And there's sort of the question of why. Why is a Jedi trained for hand-to-hand combat? Now it's to fight Darth Vader and the Sith. Okay, but why do the Sith exist? Why do we need to fight them in hand-to-hand combat? Why can't we just shoot them? Things like that. And why do we have all these other things sort of around? And now we know we can't just shoot them because they can block blaster bolts.
Yeah.
But we see in some of these other episodes the fact that Jedi can be overwhelmed. They are just particularly good soldiers. But why are they trained this way? Why is this part of Jedi training?
I think the out-of-universe explanation is that George Lucas loved Kurosawa films and he did a lot of samurai stuff.
Yes, exactly. Well, we really see an explanation here. And again, her fighting necessarily without the lightsaber to start off with. The idea that I'm not fighting another Jedi. I'm not fighting somebody who uses a lightsaber, so I shouldn't. Kind of presentation.
You know what that scene reminded me of is the very first one of the visions where the Ronin gets to that village and doesn't draw a lightsaber right away and uses the Force to try and use the environment to win.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what I think you had from it is it gets to that idea of them being more monkish, of it being a little more pacifist, a little more peacekeeper, and that being an important aspect of it. which they then promptly crush in some of the later episodes.
I mean, so it starts out with this murder mystery, but like within 20 minutes, they clear up that she clearly didn't do it and couldn't have. She has an alibi. Yeah. So I was like, all right, well, then where are we going with this then? I guess there has to be another one, or is she lying somehow? But all of the interesting possibilities wind up being not the direction this went. She has this twin she doesn't know about, but she did know about.
Who's not was dead.
And it just kind of goes off the rails from there. And the dialogue online is focused on what most people describe as the misplaced wokeness of the show. That is not what I thought the greatest sin of this series was. It was more just sort of sloppy writing in spots where... Here's what I learned from watching this episode. If you are in a derelict ship that is hurtling into an atmosphere, all you need is a seatbelt.
That is true, yes.
Right? I mean, we've seen that happen twice now. Fasten your seatbelt and the ship will just crash and you'll be fine. That doesn't work if you're going 40 miles an hour on a highway and you hit a patch of ice.
My cardinal sin of the Acolytes as to what it is. Remember, I am a theater tech guy, as I mentioned in the last episode. Yeah. It's the costuming. Oh, my God. Sorry, but the costuming person in this was just out to lunch. I know what they were trying to do, I think. It did not work. It made no sense. It was visually distracting. The costuming that's just plain did not work. And that's, to me, that's a technical fault that should just be never happen. I mean, you can make a movie with costuming, a.k.a. Black Panther, which, the costuming in Black Panther is so well done, it's not even funny. This is the dead opposite. This is the how not to do costuming in my mind.
You should never notice costuming in a movie. Yeah. If you notice it, you've done it wrong.
And I could not notice it in every scene. It was, why are you wearing these completely impractical robes? Why are they yellow? It's like, okay, this just is not working. Whatever. So that was my mind of what was the cardinal sin with this. I also thought, I think a little bit to your comment, they sort of set up this interesting idea of how does she not remember this? I kept wondering, hey, is she having memory lapses? Is there, is there, something where it's she's in one place, she's in another? Is it that she literally has dual personalities and she's shifting positions? Stuff like that. This could all be really interesting. Nope, she's just a twin. Okay, that was kind of
the least interesting explanation.
But they do redeem it a little bit. They give you some interesting backstory. You start to get the idea that, hey, there's something sinister that happened here in the past, and that's really what's causing this. Okay, what happened? What's going on? And it involves the Jedi behaving badly is sort of the best way they sort of set it up. Which is kind of a
running theme of all of the pre-Empire Jedi. I mean, we never really get to see the Jedi being very good at anything. They're bad at waging wars. They're bad at politics. They're bad at whatever they're doing here. They're bad at investigating. The Jedi just constantly come across as being kind of incompetent.
Well, and something that I felt that it was the one value of this is it does kind of set up the fact that the Jedi are very arrogant.
Yes.
And I think it is a very good job with that, of the idea that they just know better. They're it's not the warrior monk kind of recluse type of thing. It's the warrior monk grandmaster type of thing, where it's you will come to us for wisdom because we are better than you. And we can handle this because we are better than you. And it turns out we can't let you know that we aren't better than you, so we've really got to hide this, which becomes an important aspect of it.
There's a lot of hubris going on
later
here.
on. There's a lot of hubris. There's a lot of arrogance. And I think, they were going for that with the costuming, with we're going to wear bright yellow robes in the middle of the jungle, but it just didn't work. Sorry, I'm going to be harassing the costuming the entire
No, it was distracting, and that was a problem. Yeah, so the thing is, and Kirk and I have talked about this before, the direction they went in is not the direction I would have taken this story, but the story they wanted to tell was basically about the main character. I forget his name now, but he was the guy from Squid Game, I think, South Korean actor. He was really good, especially for a guy that doesn't speak any English.
I just started watching Squid Game about halfway through Squid Game. He's really good. I understand why people love that show.
His character was interesting. Most of the other characters were various shades of irritating, except for, I thought, the guy that plays the main Sith-ish villain had an interesting take on again, to your point about the Jedi. He just wanted to be left alone to have a relationship with the Force on his own terms. Kind of let me pray the way I want to pray. And of course the Jedi wouldn't allow that, and that was what he was chafing against.
I think the twins actually do a pretty good job too. I think with the idea of just they're kind of confused, and I think they do a good job of that, sort of not knowing what's going on. They're having the story happen to them, and I think that's well portrayed. She actually does a good job of saying, the story's happening to me, I'm confused, and it's bothering me that this is happening to me. I feel like I should be in control of it. To me, the most redeeming aspect of it as a whole is the witches. I really, again, rewatching Clone Wars, I forgot how much I liked the Night Witches. They're just such a cool villain. They don't really fit with the Star Wars universe, which is kind of what's nice about them, because they're mystical, magical in a fantasy way, as opposed to in a science fiction way, and it's a nice counterpoint to the Jedi, because you really get the idea that they're kind of in some sense, they're the druidic religion, and, you've got the Jedi coming in and saying, hey, we're the, Roman Catholic Church, you do it our way or the highway.
Yeah.
And they cannot play with each other at all, and that really works. And that becomes the central conflict, as you find out, of Acolyte.
Well, I think that's probably where the story falls apart, is that about 2 or 3 episodes in, the reasons why various characters were doing what they wanted to do didn't make any sense to me, and if it was adequately explained in the narrative, it went completely over my head. Starting with the main Jedi wanting to rescue the twins from the Witch Coven, I just didn't understand why he was so insistent upon that.
Yeah, and again, I think, having watched Clone Wars and you see the stuff as the Witch Coven are clearly scary, I mean, they're very scary in it, but that's 100 years in the future.
And that's not portrayed here at all. The Coven is it's not very well done cinematically, but they are portrayed as being sympathetic, or at least the filmmakers want you to sympathize with them.
Yeah.
And it's a little confusing, and tonally it's a little conflicted, maybe, kind of like episode 3 is kind of like that too.
I think they were trying to go at they just want to practice the Force how they want to, and again, we have the Jedi saying no. And again, that's to me the real overarching theory of this is it's the Jedi way or the highway. They really view everything else as being evil and wrong.
We've never gotten an explanation for why that is. Like, was there some event in the past where if you don't have this regimented way of learning the Force, it takes over and you ultimately always become like a Sith? But never given us that fact.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, is that coming in season 2? Is that sort of the goal behind it?
There won't be a season 2
There is
now.
no season 2. Acolyte has been canceled. But it's one of those where I kind of have that same impression. You get the idea that the Jedi feel that their methodology is very important for extremely important reasons, but you have no idea why. It's not gotten into. And like the witches, I think, is the example. They're trying to set up why the witches become, in some sense, the force of evil they are in Clone Wars, because they're kind of forced into it. They're misunderstood and forced into it. And I liked that, as being sort of part of it. But to me, it didn't connect because the timing was wrong. It's 100 years before that.
If they could establish that backstory, it would also make Luke's need to establish a Jedi temple after the original trilogy more poignant, and it would better explain, the Ben Solo fall from grace and Luke's fear of not being able to, all those narrative elements would fit together better. But is there just nobody at Disney who's in charge of this stuff and deciding on the creative direction? I don't know. It feels like every one of these things is, we're going to find the next person who gets to do a Star Wars and have them do one, and there's not one creative director saying, but it has to fit together into a cohesive whole narrative the way that, say, a Marvel universe does.
I think part of the problem is there is somebody who I believe at Disney is supposed to be sort of the head of the.
It would be Kathleen Kennedy. She'd be in charge of it, or she still is.
But I think that part of it, I think the problem with it is I'm not sure they have answers to some of these questions. And
they need to ask George. He has some answers.
Again, what is sort of the nature of the Force is what they seem to be trying to explore. And at the end of it, to sort of your comment behind the idea is I just want to practice the Force how I want to practice it. That makes me a Sith. That makes me evil in their eyes. Great, that's a sympathetic, interesting position. Why does it make them evil in their eyes? Is it dangerous? Is it inherently concerning? Is it necessarily a problem? We don't know the answer to those questions, and you got to wonder, was that something that was going to be gone into in season 2? They had to set it up, and now we're just never going to see it. Is it something that we talk about some of the future projects? There is a proposed project which I think is set 500 years before Star Wars at this point in time. Are we going to get into it there? What are we going to see sort of behind this? And again, to me, it feels like what Acolyte was trying to explore is why do we have Sith in the Star Wars universe? And it never went there. It sort of started from the premise that they already existed and sort of get a set of why is it attractive, but they never did why are they there in the
first place. What is interesting, at this point, the Sith are also seen... Because remember when Episode 1 starts, the Sith are believed to be extinct.
Yeah.
So at this point, they're also believed to be extinct. And although they're discovered that information is lost somehow.
I think
when
part
we
of it
get
is
to,
keeping it secret.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the
because
idea
the very
behind this.
last scene is Yoda, who apparently doesn't know. So
Yeah.
I guess they're still lying to him too. But can't Jedi sense emotions? Like, it just, again, they all just seem to be so bad at what they do. Okay, so we won't beat that one to death. So I mean, suffice it to say, Acolyte started out with a lot of promise and just kind of didn't deliver
And
any
kind of,
of
quite
it.
frankly, ended with a lot of promise, but the show itself didn't really make it from one point A to point B.
We should say it was the most expensive thing they've done, which I don't know where the budget went on this, but
That's
I guess.
live vocation.
Yeah, not costumes or editing. I mean, I was actually a little disappointed they're not going to make a second season. I'm like, all right, this was kind of sloppy and ham-fisted, but okay, give it another shot. What can we do with this story? It's not like there's not a decent groundwork that's set up here. There's pieces. Can somebody put them all together into something a little more coherent? But I guess we're not going to get that. So moving on to something that is much more coherent, Andor.
Andor, which, that diapold opposite, I think I'm going to say Andor is one of my favorite Star Wars properties to come out.
So we should say with Andor is also very polarizing, I think, because Andor is excellent television. It's not necessarily excellent Star Wars.
The other thing I think we have with Andor is it's not epic in any way, shape, or form.
No, I don't think there's a single lightsaber. There's no lightsaber fights. So it kind of gets down to when you're watching these things, what is it that you want to see? Do you want to just re-experience what it was like to watch the original trilogy for the first time? If that's what you want, you will be disappointed by Andor, because that is not the experience. It is not a rollicking, swashbuckling adventure full of moral clarity and obvious good guys and bad guys. It's just a bunch of crappy people.
Yeah. Well, and what I still love about Andor, and to me, the reason I love Andor is because it's the one place you see the Empire forming.
Yeah.
In a way that they haven't really done anywhere else. You see it a bit in Clone Wars, you see it a bit in Rebels, in some of the animated
The Bad
shows.
Batch a little bit, we saw that.
So the same kind of thing. But Andor is the average person getting involved with the Empire. What I really like about it is it's the everyman story. Andor, there's no heroes here. There's no epic battles. There's nothing epically famous. It's one sort of mediocre guy ending up on the wrong side of the law because he's not entirely a good guy. He's not really a bad guy. But
the first thing he does is murder 2 people in the first episode.
Exactly. But he's not really bad.
He's kind of forced into it.
He's kind of forced into it. But, I think what you really get in conjunction with this thing is that you get the oppressiveness of the Empire in a way the other films don't get across because they're hero stories. Mm-hmm. You have to have the hero fight the Empire. The Empire is evil, but it's just a disembodied evil. Andor the Empire is really oppressive, really awful. Yeah. And it sucks.
You also get to see, one of the things we often talk about is, okay, the Death Star gets blown up in episode 4. Don't they slaughter like 10 million people who live on that thing? Like the janitor didn't do anything wrong. What you see in this series is more of the rank and file Imperial personnel, and you can see how you could not be an evil person and still want to believe in the mission. So we've got Dedra, who is with the Imperial Security Bureau, and she's just convinced that somebody somewhere is siphoning off money out of the government and funneling it to rebels who are buying weapons and who are going to launch a violent insurgency.
Yeah.
And she just wants to put
she's right.
She's right. That is, as we know, that happens. And newsflash, they win. But you see how she's dedicated to her job and her professional pride and just trying to figure this out. And none of the people on that council are overtly evil. None of them are out there trying to slaughter a bunch of people. They're working for the Security Bureau. It's their job to find terrorist threats, which is what the rebellion looks like at this point.
Yeah, and that's, I think the big thing about it is because we know what we know about the Empire, and it's because it's set up to be it's an evil empire, and that's what it is. We know they're on the wrong side of the coin.
Do they know that?
They don't really know that, and they're portrayed as, I wouldn't say necessarily sympathetic, but believable.
Yeah.
You just kind of accept the fact that no, these people they're just doing their jobs. They don't realize what they're doing. We only know it because we know the grander story. And quite frankly, a lot of this is hidden. It's the same way as you don't really see the Emperor in this, but you see him in vidcasts. He's just a disembodied head. He's not a character. Darth Vader is nowhere to be seen. That kind of thing. We don't see the enforcers. We don't see Tarkin. We don't see sort of the truly evil, commanders that are in this because they don't care. They want to win. Things that you see the everyman is what it is on both sides of the equation.
We get the one guy, Cyril, the guy that's so when it starts out, it's interesting too because we're in this transition period where the Empire hasn't really established administrative control over all these systems, and some of them are being administered by private security companies, which is how this starts out. And one of the guys at one of those companies is a little overzealous. We have a violent incident in episode 3 or 4. And we should also say this one it's interesting. There's really 3 different series here. The first 3 episodes or so are about Cassian's background, him getting into legal trouble and having to flee his planet. Yeah. And he's enticed off the planet. He's trying to steal trying to buy black market goods and sell it for money for himself. The person he turns out he's selling it to is Luthen, who is the antiques dealer on Coruscant, who's also secretly funding the rebellion and gathering intelligence. So the first couple episodes are him connecting with Luthen. Then he gets pulled into the heist, which we also find out Luthen is orchestrating again to fund the rebellion. That's the next 3 episodes or so. And then the second half is really about the prison break, because he gets thrown in prison on unfair charges.
Somewhat trumped up charges, though he probably belongs in prison.
Yeah, he's not exactly. And then there's the prison break. So it's interesting. I do wonder, if when this was written, did they intend for this to be like any one of those could have been a whole season by itself? So did they condense it down?
I think they probably did. He probably did look at it as being multiple stories, but I think it's also there's just not enough content to really make it interesting. Yeah. Because this is so much of a background everyman story. Yeah. I think you can't go into a whole lot of detail of it, or else it's going to get dull.
That said, I thought they had a couple of diversions here that didn't really add much to the story. Kind of like the Acolyte. When we start out, he's on some other planet looking for his lost sister. And then that plot line is just dropped. The sister never really comes back. Yeah. He never finds her.
Gotta believe that's something coming in season 2, season 3.
You think so, right? And then we get a bunch of flashbacks about his home planet and some strip mining operation and a crashed ship that takes place there, which we find out is how he gets off that planet and hooks up with the woman who, not hooks up in the sexual sense, but connects with the woman who would later become his surrogate mom, who dies later in the show. But, did we need all that background? I didn't feel like it added a whole lot to the character.
Yeah. Well, again, what I really got from it is we were trying to show a relatively wide time period to get the everyman perspective. Yeah. And so we needed to have some kind of conflict with the Empire at various points in his life.
That was the Republic at the time, though.
Yeah, and to get... Well, yeah, but the Republic is the Empire.
At this point, they're kind of the same, right? All the same people are still in charge.
And so what we really had is, I feel like we really kind of got a little bit of this... Hey, you see the early Empire with him as a kid. You see the sort of later Empire with this. Then you sort of see the building Empire with the prison and it becoming the more sinister organization we're sort of used to. And it getting more and more sinister during that point in time. And again, to me, that was what I really enjoyed about this, is I liked the idea of sort of watching the Republic fall in slow motion.
Yeah.
Which is the thing they didn't do with Anakin. They could have done in the prequels. Is you see Anakin fall, but you don't see him fall in slow motion. He falls very suddenly in many respects.
Yeah, almost abruptly.
And it doesn't really work, because I think you would do better falling in slow motion. Whereas Andor is you see the universe fall in slow motion.
And that's a good point. And we often say that Star Wars is more of a lens. It's more of a way to focus a story than a story unto itself. And the original trilogy was George Lucas's love letter to the pulp cereals he liked growing up,
and the Dam Busters.
The Dam Busters. And then the Mandalorian is Filoni's love letter to Arthurian legends. And we said the reason the sequels feel kind of flat is that there's not really a love letter to anything other than Star Wars. But it's just that's just telling a Star Wars story about Star Wars. This one, Andor, seems like it wants to answer the question Kirk and I often ask, which is practically speaking, how would you ever administer a global empire like this? It just seems impossible. Star Trek gets into a little bit more of that kind of detail with its narrative. Star Wars, it's not that kind of show, right? Which is why I say if you're looking for a traditional Star Wars show, this will disappoint you. But if you're one of those nuts and bolts world-building people like we are, seeing Cyril have to go work at the Departments of Weights and Measures was interesting.
My real take from it, and again, I think to me what kind of this was a love letter to the dystopian future.
Yeah.
As it was, how do we get to a dystopian future? I think one of the problems you bump into is a lot of books that are in dystopian futures are already there.
Yeah.
And in some sense, it's Songbirds and Serpents to Star Wars, as to Hunger Games, where it's we need to set up why the Hunger Games happens and sort of the background of it. So let's have Songbirds and Serpents, which is itself a very good movie, and I haven't read the book. But we have this being the sort of love letter to how do we get to Star Wars? How do we get to A New Hope? Where this world's awful. I mean, everything's awful. The rebellion's the only thing that possibly survives and is remotely interesting.
Yeah, it's a tough story to tell, right? Like it's sort of the classic metaphor of the frog boiling slowly, right? Yeah. It's not always pretty to watch.
Yeah, and it makes good television, quite frankly, that's why
a long format like this especially, and this maybe is why the prequels didn't work. Is the way to do that is, you're right, have Anakin decline slowly. Yeah. But we didn't get that because we wasted the entire first episode on basically nothing happens to him. Yeah. And then the second episode, he's already an asshole. So.
and you do see it if you watch Clone Wars, the animated again. I keep falling back on it because we're watching it again right now. That's 7 seasons of Anakin falling slow. 6 seasons of Anakin falling slowly.
And it works a lot better.
And then one of him trying to recover to deal with having fallen slowly. And it works a lot better because you see, there's episodes where you see parts of what's going to turn Anakin starting to come out. You see sometimes you have to do things. There's the great episode where they're breaking out the Jedi Master who ends up, dying in the course of it, with Ahsoka, where you see him interacting with Tarkin, and you see we're not going far enough. We need to end the war. We need to get the idea. What people want is peace, and you get Anakin and Tarkin sort of aligning on the same page. Both being on the Republic side at this point in time, being on the right side of the conflict. And you can see them both going down this, no, we want order. Yeah. And that's a good sort of, tinge of where we're going in this, to watch the two of them. Which I actually was good that they did that with Tarkin, because that was a good character to deal with. It
made sense, yeah. There's another saying we get on some of the other podcasts you listen to, freedom is messy. Liberty is messy. Democracy is messy. And the Empire is the opposite of that.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's Andor. Moving on to Ahsoka. Was 6 episodes, 8 episodes? It's basically Rebels, the new season of Rebels in real time. So I'm to defer to you on this. I watched it. I've only seen like the half of the first season of Rebels. I did watch at your suggestion one of those, here's everything you need to know to make sense out of Ahsoka. It sure seems like a lot happened during Rebels that I need to get caught up on. As somebody who didn't know the story or the background of the character that well, I largely enjoyed this. I especially enjoyed that they brought Hayden Christensen back to reprise Anakin and Vader. Although I'm not sure where this leaves us with Vader, because Ahsoka enters the realm between the worlds and Anakin/Vader is there, and he's kind of both. So when Vader dies in episode 6, does that mean that Anakin was redeemed or not? Or is he still partially Darth Vader?
The thing I had with it, so my basic take behind it is, I think anybody who's watched Clone Wars, who's watched Rebels, who thinks, you really fall in love with Ahsoka in Clone Wars. You just can't avoid it. She is probably the most interesting character in Clone Wars, and in many respects, Clone Wars is about her. Now, it's about, hey, Millie, the episodes we're watching right now, Ahsoka is the lead character. I mean, I'm only in season 4, and she's really the lead character in a lot of these episodes. What is great about Clone Wars behind it is Ahsoka's dealing with Anakin's fall. Because, again, while Anakin's fall is sort of sudden and unpredicted and sort of arguably a little ham-fisted in episode 3, Ahsoka has to deal with it and and it's a major issue, and she has 2 seasons to deal with it. So one before and one after. So it's one of those things where I think it's hard not to love Ahsoka as a character. I was a little bit, when she first came back in Mandalorian, she didn't feel right. When they got into her in Ahsoka, she did. And I don't know if that was just because of having to put her in the Mandalorian universe, where they were trying to move the character.
She's kind of out of time.
Yeah, she's a bit out of time in Mandalorian. Whereas in the Ahsoka show, I think she becomes very good. I thought there were a few things that they did just brilliantly in Ahsoka, and that I really loved. My number one thing from Ahsoka is I love the very ritualistic nature they give the lightsaber battles. Mm-hmm. Like, these are things of serious consequence. They have a feel almost of like duels, like Alexander Hamilton duels.
It reminded me a bit of like medieval armies lining up across the field.
And sending their champions.
Yeah, send the champions out, or you send people out to negotiate. Are we going to have a fight, or are we not going to have a fight? And this whole, there's a certain way to do these things.
Yeah, and it has, a very ritualistic, there's an import to it. and then giving the two Sith and Ahsoka incredibly different sword fighting styles. Ahsoka fights with her blades reversed. She fights with a blade in both hands. They're shorter. We see, Baylor, I think his name is what it is. Balin with classic British longsword.
Yeah, he fights like a medieval knight.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And it was it's brilliant to watch them fight each other and the whole styles behind it. But when they first see each other, we have to take our cloaks off. We're going to discuss things. There's this massive import behind it, which we don't see except in, surprisingly enough, episode 1 with the first encounter of Darth Maul and being this very sort of ritualistic type combat thing. We even see them meditating, between it. Probably still one of the best lightsaber battles ever.
Yeah.
Is that one. And episode 4, Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. The sort of epitome the initial lightsaber battle, where the idea this is huge import behind the Sith and the Jedi meeting, and that this is important. And that's, to me, that was one of the real things I loved about Ahsoka, and I really enjoyed. The other thing I really loved about Ahsoka is Thrawn.
Yeah.
I have a T-shirt with his signature phrase, with "Long live the Empire" in conjunction with it. I loved Thrawn. What I loved about Thrawn is he is just meticulous. I mean, they made his character sort of brilliant, in the way he's meticulous and stuff like that. But and I said, when we talked about this when it first came out, where they send out the TIE fighters to go and harass Ahsoka and they get shot down, and his response back is, okay, mark them as deceased, make sure, write down that they deserve medals, And it's this very militaristic, no, this happens. We kind of knew this was a suicide mission, but it had to happen so we could escape. They deserve medals for doing it. Great, move on.
Yeah.
And it's very calculating. It's utterly ruthless, and it's completely and totally emotionless. And he does that in his reactions. The way one of them didn't put on your Tales for the Empire. His reaction in conjunction with in Tales for the Empire when he first meets our governor. I can't remember her name. From the Mandalorian that we sort of encounter in conjunction with, is this whole thing where it's just very much this: the Empire's order. We are going to bring order to the universe, and it doesn't matter what stands in the way; it will be done. And
Thrawn's kind of the epitome of that. Is he evil? I mean, not really. He's just kind of a guy. He's an extremely competent, extremely intelligent military officer who believes in carrying out his mission successfully.
Yeah. And he's going to see it done no matter the cost, and it's going to be done well. And that's just sort of the thing with him. So that was really the thing I took from it. So I thought they did just a great job about it. I much have watched the scene with him at the very end when Ahsoka's chasing him, and it's you may have won the battle, but you've lost the war. Long live the Empire, and he hits hyperspace, and you're like, oh my God, that is just, she just got completely and totally taunted in a way that's monotone. Yeah. And it's this is so good. Just why I watched him probably say that 5 times. I watched him say "Long live the Empire." When he does that.
We should also give a shout out to the late, Ray Stevenson was his name?
Yeah.
The guy that played Balaam Skull.
Yep.
Probably the most compelling new character introduced in this series. You're right. He's this big, large, imposing, stocky figure. He kind of has a broadsword / long sword style, two-handed sword fighting technique. It's not fine like a rapier or a saber or like a fencing foil like we see in. It reminds me of Luke at the end of episode 6, where he just grabs the handle of 2 hands and starts wailing on Vader because he's lost all control. Except Skull's never out of control. He's kind of the mirror image of Thrawn that way. He's calm and collected and thoughtful and reserved. But when he needs to go into action, he can go into action. And he has sort of a Bruce Lee economy of motion type approach to how he fights. Yeah. It was just great to see all these different styles. Then you've got Sabine on the far end, who's still trying to learn how to fight. He's not very good at it yet and feels a little out of control. There's so much good visual narrative to illustrate where all these characters are in their relative journeys.
Yeah, and their differences of personalities, and again, when you first see him fight Ahsoka, and again, you can literally, if you were just to watch that, you can imagine him in full plate armor with the big swirling cape around him, Arthurian, total Arthurian knight behind it, and that's the way he moves. Even though he's not. He's, wearing, about no armor basically at all. Essentially, I wouldn't say a bodysuit, but, a tight-fitting sort of, basic suit, type of clothing. He's taken his cape off. he doesn't have a helm on, but it totally looks like he could.
He's got that big beard. He's got kind of a big square head. And,
And and to me also the question you really had with him is he's unquestionably a Sith. He knows exactly where he stands.
But again, is he
kind of
evil?
wonder why?
Yeah, like we don't really know what he's up to, but he doesn't seem like a guy who's like devoted to some Sith ideology. He just sees what he's doing as necessary for reasons we don't really fully understand.
And he even sees his apprentice as being a bit out of control.
Yeah.
And uses it because it's a necessary tool. But he's got Thrawn-esque elements to him again. It's kind of the, like we did. And that was, again, to me, so much of what this thing was is you saw the Empire as order. And to me, what I really saw from Ahsoka, and again, we talked about this at one point in time, and I think it's true. I really see the ending of Ahsoka as sort of being this idea of saying, we've had the First Order, we had sort of all this kind of stuff, The problem we've got is we kind of need the Empire to be the bad guy. The First Order's not really the best bad guy, and I'm not sure necessarily. And so what I kind of took is the idea that there's a split. The Empire's kind of split in some respects because of the issues of Episode 6, where you have kind of here's the group that's following what the Emperor was, the kind of cult of personality around the Emperor, which is going to become the First Order, which is going to become the sequel movies. What you kind of see in Ahsoka is much more the concept of, no, the Empire is order. It is this overarching organization that just provides, benefits to all of its people. Now, yes, it happens to be tyrannical, but it's not based upon a tyrant. It's based upon the workings of many people, and whatever it is. And that's what Thrawn is working towards. And to me, I think you're going to see a split. I think we're going to see this idea that the Empire is going in two different directions. And I wonder if people later on, if they expand stuff beyond the 9 movies, we're going to have the Empire come back as a bad guy again. Yeah. And again, it's why I sort of fall on that idea of the long live the Empire. This is the Empire, not the Emperor.
Okay, and then our last one, Mandalorian Season 3.
The one I got to lean on you because I've only seen half of it.
So the Season 2 ends where, was it Djarin Din? Is that his name? Or Din Djarin? Yeah, he took his helmet off, so he has to go be cleansed in the waters of Mandalore. I expected Season 3 to be that story, and that the culmination would be him having to get there and be cleansed.
That's as far as I've made it, which is only about halfway through.
Yeah, that happens like episode 3 or 4. So again, the narrative arc didn't go where I thought it was going to go. I thought it was the most disappointing of the 3 seasons of The Mandalorian. I feel like the show, I kind of wish they had let Luke keep Baby Yoda, keep Grogu after the last season, and free the Mandalorian up to go on his own story, his own independent direction. Because I think they didn't, because it's such a popular character, so it seems like a missed opportunity to develop that relationship. But nothing really happens or changes with Baby Yoda. He's just along for the ride to be in danger and be like a vehicle for plot to happen. And it still has sort of one of the same problems that bedeviled the first 2 seasons, where each episode is just a whole lot of really excellently written, choreographed, and executed action in service of very, very little story or character development. Yeah. And so when you get to the end, I'm like, I saw a lot of stuff. It was a spectacle. I was entertained by it, but it didn't really drive anything forward. None of it really advanced the story, or at least you could have done 60 seconds of action and advanced the story just as much. So I feel like Mandalorian kind of goes in the opposite direction of Andor, whereas in Andor there was not a lot of action; it was all plot development and story. This is the other way, where it's a lot of filler content. Yeah. So I think it might just be different audiences these are made for.
I think the biggest problem with Mandalorian is exactly that. I don't think they intended Grogu to stick around, but he became so massively popular they kind of needed him to.
You can't ditch him.
And they were having to write a different story because of that. I'm sort of hoping there's been this proposal of the Mandalorian movie. I think it's even being made. At this point
I think so. It's on our list.
They've even been filming for it already. But yeah, I think that I'm hoping that'll be the thing, because I think they got to figure out how to do this as a 2-person show as opposed to a 1-person show. But you can see one of the persons is a Muppet. Yeah. But it's the thing where that was sort of the take I had, is I think it was a little bit difficult to figure out how do we keep Grogu in here. Yeah. And sort of, what do we do with Grogu?
It's not, like I said, it's not bad. It's one of those things, kind of like the Acolyte. Had they taken the same core narrative concepts and been a little more thoughtful about how you construct a story out of it, it could have been a lot better. And by the end, honestly, I was just bored. I'm like, all right, here we go. An episode just full of more actions and monsters and ships and this and that. And I kind of lost track of who's double-crossed who and who wants what. And I just kind of wanted to get to the end of it and get it over with so I could say I watched it.
The only thing I actually really liked about it is so far, and again, I'm only about halfway through, he's just been redeemed in where I am, is the sort of continuation of the sort of Mandalorian power struggle plot and what exactly are the Mandalorians.
See, that I thought would be the best part. Like, how does he get the Darksaber over to Bo-Katan?
Yeah.
And that winds up not being that interesting. So
yeah, and that kind of thing sort of. So that's one thing I enjoyed with it. And again, a lot of that is stuff in Clone Wars where they, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's right, this is where the Darksaber gets introduced, and stuff like that. So I like the concept of the Mandalorian power struggle. I just don't think it was well enough used. And again, I have to wonder if part of that is because they needed to include Grogu, and it just didn't fit as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so that's those. I have not seen all of Tales of the Empire or Tales of the Republic, so we'll save that for another time. Yep. Let's talk briefly about what's coming up. We have a list here that I've printed out for me and Kirk. There's a lot of stuff coming out. We'll go through this real quick, and we'll give maybe 1 to 10 our interest level in each one of these things.
We should mention Skeleton Crew, which is out right now.
Yes.
Again, the one thing to mention with Skeleton Crew, this is the holiday episode. We have to mention the call out in Skeleton Crew to the gymnast scene from the holiday special.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that like the ultimate Easter egg, I think, in anything that they've ever done, that was just awesome.
If you don't know what that is, so the Star Wars, I'll link to it in the show notes. We did an episode on the Star Wars, the original holiday special, which was just god-awful. But they reused the actual footage from that in it's
a holograms being watched as children's entertainment.
In the Skeleton Crew. I can't believe they did that.
And it's just one of those, in my mind, like, that was the ultimate Easter egg they have ever done in Star Wars to do that. It was. They've said, I've read stuff behind the scenes that said it was a complete labor of love to do it. It's brilliant. It's put in.
It looks good.
It doesn't matter. Like, it's so unimportant to the storyline and stuff like that.
If you don't know where it came from, you won't even notice it. But if you do, you'll be like, "Wow, that took some guts to try and do that."
And that's I loved it. I love the fact that they did that.
Okay, so at the top of our list, Star Wars Andor Season 2.
Yeah, totally looking forward to it.
Absolutely interested in this. Debuts April 22nd. One that we just realized was coming out, Visions Season 3.
Yeah, another one really looking forward to it. I've loved what they've done with Visions. I mean, Visions is exploring just those weird aspects of the universe. I'm hoping they just keep letting people have this complete free reign.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them weren't good. We didn't like some of the season ones. We've liked some of the other season ones. But I love what they're doing. That's the thing. I love the concept, and I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, same here. We're gonna watch that one. Jon Favreau's Mandalorian and Grogu movie debuting May 22nd, 2026. I think this is the end of the Mandalorian Grogu story.
I just don't know. I mean, again,
we're gonna go see it, of course.
Yeah, I'm gonna see it.
My expectations are very modest. I just don't know how you merge the Grogu character into the rest of the narrative in a way that makes any sense and doesn't result in him getting killed.
Yeah, I think we're going to end up seeing some interesting stuff at the end of it. I think it's going to be... What I'm hoping for it is with a longer format thing, we can have a little more plot. Because we need a 2-hour movie. We can't just have a lot of action scenes, so we need a 2-hour plot. Quite frankly, Mandalorian might work better as a movie format now.
Yeah.
I think it worked well as a TV format to start with, but I think now that the characters are so well established, we know what it is. It's maybe my thought with it is a lot of what they did with stuff like Rogue One, where, yes, there's a whole bunch of scenes in the beginning, which makes sense if you've seen all the shows, but then let's just go from there and kind of run with a standalone story that's interesting. So,
Ahsoka Season 2, it says in development. We don't have a date, presumably not this year. I'll watch it. I'm definitely curious to see where they go with that. I thought they left it in a good spot.
Yeah. I really want to know where they're going with this one. To me, Ahsoka Season 2 is the one that's the most intriguing to me of where they're going to go with it.
Like, are they going to have the Thrawn narrative connect to where the Zahn novels went? Because the Zahn novels themselves are not canon. So we have some of the characters and some of the back, like Kabarak is there, or Rook is there, Thrawn is there. So some of those characters are in the show. So presumably some of the background is as well. But are they going to kind of leave that out there that all happened at some point and we've moved on from it?
I think that's going to be the answer to it. Is it's going to just be left alone. So what it is going to say it happened, but it's been left alone because it also occurs right after Jedi, so technically it's before Ahsoka. Yeah. And so I think the thing that we have with it is where I'm really interested with this is where are we going with these Night Sisters? I think there's a recognition that the Night Sisters are cool, and it'll be interesting to see where they go with them and be interested behind it. I didn't realize, again, when we were watching Clone Wars, that the zombie stormtroopers was given. Like, there's zombie troopers in Clone Wars, and I was like, I'd totally forgotten about that. So again, what I really like about it is, to me, it's exploring the more mystical, and I really like this idea of it being the kind of ritualistic. Ahsoka, to me, is starting to go fantasy. It's starting to go high fantasy versus being science fiction. And quite frankly, I like that in the Star Wars universe because it kind of works with the Star Wars universe. You can set Dungeons and Dragons in Star Wars without a problem.
Next one is Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie.
I think we should just mention there's a ton of
whole bunch
different
of these
people's movies.
This one has no hint on what it is. It just says Taika Waititi Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
He's done some other Star Wars things, I think. Maybe...
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest.
James Mangold, Dawn of the Jedi movie. This one I'm very interested in for a couple of reasons. One, Dawn of the Jedi sounds like we're going to go way, way back, thousands of years.
Is this the one that they're saying is set 500 years ahead of time?
I think more than that. I think you're looking at thousands, because it was over 1,000 generations, the Knights Jedi were the Guardians of Peace. So, James Mangold, I like him a lot. He did the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I don't know if tonally that's where you want to go with
you
this.
You can't really do that with Star Wars.
But... we'll see. We've also got Dave Filoni's Mandoverse New Republic movie. I don't see how that's different from Jon Favreau's Mandalorian and Grogu movie, but we'll see. This one I'd never heard of.
It's Mandoverse, so I've got to wonder if it has something to do with Mandalore.
That could be.
Because again, the whole Mandalore concept is in Clone Wars, which is Filoni. He wrote all those episodes, so my guess is that's where that's going.
We've got, I can't pronounce this, Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's New Jedi Order movie. Is that the one they're doing with Rey maybe now? Because I know that Daisy Ridley's filming.
Yeah.
So that sounds like it's kind of set after the events of Episode 9. That would be interesting to see where they go with that. I would like to see the yellow lightsaber again. Simon Kinberg Star Wars trilogy.
The lightsaber is an important aspect of Skeleton Crew, by the way.
Is it? Okay. Simon Kinberg Star Wars trilogy. I don't know who that is. I've heard nothing about this. It says it's in development.
Yep.
So a whole nother movie, a trilogy of movies. So who knows? The rest of these we all don't know. We've got
Rogue Squadron. I think is worth mentioning because it's my understanding is that there is a script for Rogue Squadron. This one's fell to the line and it got totally killed, and now it's back.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that one maybe was greenlit because Rogue One, that aspect of it was well received, but I've heard nothing else about this. No casting choices, nothing.
See, my understanding from it is that this whole thing was done. It was going to be one of the next movies. It might have even been after Mandalorian. I'm trying to run through the whole background of it, but it made it fairly far along. Then sort of got canned, and there was a lot of dissatisfaction with the fact that it got canned and how it got canned, and sort of now it's back again, and it's. There may be some of the idea of trying to produce it more independently. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think that's one that's just going to be it's out there. The immediate thing that sort of jumps to mind is, are we going to have the sort of rogue James Bond movie in the Star Wars universe now? Maybe, but we'll see.
We got Mandalorian Season 4 / Book of Boba Fett Season 2, status unknown. I really don't think we need a Season 2 of Book of Boba Fett. And if we get the Mando movie, I don't think we're going to have a Mandalorian Season 4. It's like the third Mandoverse thing we've got in here, so this seems like overkill to me. I don't know.
Who knows?
Star Wars Lando movie. Now, this is the one I want them to make.
We all kind of want Lando. Just because we like Lando.
Oh, God, I thought Donald Glover was so good in that. So, status unknown. We don't know if that's coming out. Rangers of the New Republic TV series presumed canceled.
Yeah. All the rest of these are presumed canceled, I think.
Untitled J.D. Dillard / Matt Owens movie. Can we just have like a Ben Siders / Kirk Damon Star Wars trilogy movie? Add that on here.
I can write one.
Rian Johnson Star Wars trilogy presumed canceled. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Kevin Feige Star Wars movie presumed canceled, and David Beinhoff and D.B. Weiss. That's the Game of Thrones guys from my alma mater, University of Iowa. Star Wars movies presumed canceled. So a lot of stuff that, I mean, it feels like they just like casually mention, oh yeah, that guy's a famous director. We're going to give him a Star Wars trilogy to make.
I think a lot of it, quite frankly, is people writing Star Wars things that they want to make. That are reasonably famous directors, actors, whatever. They're writing something or they have an idea for something they want to make. They're pitching it to Disney. Disney's bouncing it around, and then they're just canceling a lot of stuff.
I'm guessing they're optioning all this stuff, and then as they get along, they're not finding the scratch to put it all together.
Yeah. I mean, or it's it's showrunners are selling it, but then it's once it hits a little further along, it's just not getting through. Again, I think one question I have, like all these potential movies that are in development, I think some of these are going to disappear. I mean, I also look at it and say with this many movies potentially in development, I'm very worried at least one or two of these, quite frankly, is going to crash and burn. Like, it's going to be terrible.
Absolutely. And if you look at this list, we've got over a dozen things on here. Only 3 have dates. Andor, April 22nd of this year. Visions, 2025. They'll keep making Visions. That one's easy. Because they don't have to do anything. Somebody else makes it. They just need to publish it.
And again, I think it's proven enormously popular. So
Grogu movie is coming out. And then,
again, I'm sure that's filming. So it's that one's happening.
All the rest of this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in development. The Simon Kinberg trilogy is in development.
I think Ahsoka season 2 is unquestionably happening. They left it open. Ahsoka was popular.
But what does that mean in development? That could mean that we're still trying to get a script pulled together. We're still trying to get funding pulled together. I don't believe any of this stuff until they've got a date certain. So there's a lot kind of floating around out there, and it just feels like Disney's just not sure what to do with this very expensive property it bought.
Well, and I think we're also starting to see a serious shakeup. Maybe part of it's post-COVID, whatever it might be. But we've seen a serious shakeup of the MCU. Different stuff coming out and the way they're doing the MCU. I don't think the multiverse is doing nearly as well as they thought it was going to.
No, I mean, do people have multiverse and Star Wars fatigue at this point?
Yeah, and you got to kind of wonder: are we seeing that kind of concern with it? We just had Star Trek, and basically is Discovery. I can't remember because I've gotten out of Star Trek. That Paramount has now said is not canon. Mm-hmm. They took one of the entire episodes, the entire shows, and said nope, it never happened. And it's like, okay, that's different.
Yeah.
Because it was unpopular. Are we just seeing the fact that and again there was sort of discussion in a prior episode about these long-lasting properties, this idea of sort of how do we keep these things alive, which is what they seem trying to do. Are we starting to see fatigue, and are we starting to see people going, no, we just want something original?
Yeah, something new.
And maybe that's the reason why the ones we're seeing around Star Wars, we're seeing all these. Hey, a bunch of New Republic stuff set 5,000 years in the past. Okay, let's have Jedi Knights, but let's tell a story that's something totally different.
That's what I mean. I feel like the Star Wars content that has done the best is the Star Wars content that's trying the least to be more Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like Andor, I thought worked really, really well in terms of just good quality television. But again, and maybe this is the problem they've got, is you've got an audience comprised of people our age, a bunch of Gen Xers who
grew up with the original trilogy, and basically that will always be the best, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's always going to be Empire Strikes Back.
It's always going to be Empire Strikes Back.
Which is lightning in a bottle you're never going to capture again. And we keep waiting for them to make another one of those, and when they try, we get the sequel trilogy, which is unsatisfying. And so then when we go to Andor, cinephiles like you and I enjoy that because we can nerd out over
and massive Star Trek.
Yeah. The people are into that kind of minutia. But your garden, but then your younger fans probably don't care. They grew up in the prequels where Star Wars means a 45-minute lightsaber battle. That's what they want to see. You can't make content that's going to please both of those crowds. I just don't think you can.
And again, this is where I come back to it. I feel like I'm just harping on Clone Wars. This episode is whatever it is. But where we are in Clone Wars, we just had Darth Maul, do his thing in conjunction with it. I had forgotten how much I just love Darth Maul's character in Clone Wars. He's such a good character, and you realize just how much potential they lost with him, after the prequel. Now, admittedly, he's a different character in the Clone Wars than he is in the prequels. But you can have the crazy, and again, every time I see Darth Maul in Clone Wars, I'm brought back to the first time I saw the trailer and him ignite the double-sided lightsaber, and just how cool that was, with it, and being like, oh my goodness, who is this guy? Who is this, evil Sith Lord? This is going to be so cool. And to me, that's when you talk about lightning in the bottle, there's 2 lightning in the bottle episodes for me as a Star Wars fan. Number 1 is Empire Strikes Back and seeing Empire Strikes Back for the first time, and no, I am your father. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert, we all knew that one. And 2 being the very first time I watched the prequel trailer, the episode 1 trailer.
I miss being that excited for a new movie. It's been a long time since. and maybe that's just, again, a part of that's a function of our age. How old were you when that came out? 99?
And I was in law school.
I was 23, I think, or 22. It was a long time ago. So we're different ages now, and I just think it's we've been burned enough with a lot of this stuff being mediocre to sometimes downright bad. But I think some of it also is some of it may not be written for us anymore.
Yeah, it may be written for the guys who wrote into the prequels. quite frankly, the kids today who are potentially watching this grew up with the sequels being Star Wars.
Oh yeah, and if you think about it, if you're trying to make Star Wars for the next generation of fans, you're going to make something different than what I, as a 50-year-old man, would want to see.
And some of it, quite frankly, might be The Mandalorian. I mean, that's we have a generation right now whose Star Wars probably is The Mandalorian.
And like the things that you and I don't like about The Mandalorian is probably the stuff that is deliberately chosen because it appeals to that generation and its attention span, which you have kids that age, it's extremely short.
Although my son can't stand The Mandalorian. He doesn't like it as a show at all. It's the one Star Wars content he refuses to watch. He was kind of iffy on if he was going to like Skeleton Crew, but he wants to watch it as soon as it comes out because it's the new content. So that he has zero interest whatsoever in watching season 3 of The Mandalorian. It's why I haven't seen part of it. It's because I have to watch it on my own.
Well, same here. My kids don't want to watch any of it. It's remarkable. Okay, I think we've beat Star Wars to death.
We like beating Star Wars to death. It's a common thing on this show. Hey, it's been an hour and we're talking about Star Wars.
It's been an hour talking about Star Wars and repeated herself 1,000 times. Okay, that's so I don't know what's going on.
But costuming in Acolyte is just terrible. Sorry, I had to do it one more time.
It is. Costuming, the lighting's not great either. So next going on, we're going to try, we say this every year, and we're really good about it for like 8 weeks, but we are going to try to get content out more regularly. I think you can expect at least one AI episode this year because there will be cases coming down in these AI lawsuits that are going on.
There's some very interesting stuff coming down. There's a lot of stuff pending in front of the courts. There's a lot of things happening kind of, I'd say, behind the scenes. I think we're also going to see some very interesting... one episode we may have to talk about is there going to be shakeups at the patent office when we see the new administration come in, the new Department of Commerce, and whoever tends up to, we know that, we're going to have a new head of the patent office. Mm-hmm. Who's it going to be, and what are they going to do?
We don't typically find out for like a year in the new administration, so that'll be interesting. Okay, that's all for this time. We'll see you next time. Orem, play us out.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by Lewis Rice LLC, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. This podcast was produced and recorded in St. Louis, Missouri.